Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Thank you for joining this session on exploring diverse methods to integrate Dataverse with Microsoft Fabric. Now, before we proceed, a little bit about myself. I am Nandan Hegde. I work as a data architect at Accenture. I am a 2 times Microsoft Data Platform MVP, a Microsoft Fabric super user, an Azure Community Champion, and a C# Corner MVP. You all can reach out to me via my Twitter or LinkedIn profile. And I do enjoy writing blogs, and this is my blog site. Now, enough about myself, and let's move on to the major topic. So I apologize in advance to those who are already familiar with what Microsoft Fabric is, but to those who are new to this ecosystem or the world, I'll give a little bit introduction about what Microsoft Fabric is. So Microsoft Fabric is basically a Microsoft software as a service tool that provides an end-to-end analytical and data platform designed for enterprises that require a unified solution. And it covers everything from data engineering, data movement, data storage, data science, and data analytics, along with real-time analytics. And everything is based on top of one logical concept of one lake. So, what is one lake? So, one can consider one lake as the modern data lake solution that has been developed by Microsoft, designed to streamline the data management and analytics in the cloud platform. Now, one lake is basically an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account that manages all the data and artifacts across your domains and workspaces, which are part of the Fabric ecosystem. And one additional benefit that Microsoft has embedded in this data lake aspect is, in addition to storing the data, which can be ingested in multiple ways, correct? It also comes up with a data virtualization concept called shortcuts. Now, this shortcuts allows one to access and use data in real time that is sitting in some external platforms like Azure Data Lake Storage, Dataverse, Google Cloud Platform, or AWS S3 Bucket. So, one can say that the shortcuts empower users to create references to data stored in another locations within one lake. So instead of duplicating data across different locations, one can leverage the concept of shortcuts for data virtualization concept. Now, this is Microsoft Fabric. Now, the another major aspect of this session is Dataverse. In layman terminology, one can consider the Dataverse as the database for the Power Platform that Microsoft governs. So, Power Platform is also Microsoft ecosystem. Microsoft Fabric is also Microsoft ecosystem. And most of the organization use both the components. So, the major aspect is how to integrate these two ecosystems for better data management and data analytics. So, Microsoft Dataverse is basically a data storage and management engine which acts as a foundation for Microsoft's Power Platform, Office 365 and Dynamics 365 apps. So, Microsoft Fabric is the data and analytics one-stop shop for that Microsoft has created a SaaS product for data engineering to data analytics, and Dataverse is the database for the Power Platform ecosystem. Now, how to integrate these two ecosystems together so that organizations can make the maximum benefit of both this ecosystem. So there are a couple of ways which we would walk through this session. First is link to Microsoft Fabric, or what is called as Fabric link. Then comes shortcut. As we saw a couple of minutes earlier, that shortcuts are data virtualization ways or features that are present within the one link to refer data that is present in some external location other than Microsoft Fabric ecosystem. And one of that location was Dataverse. Then comes something called as Synapse link. And then the normal data factory experience of the Microsoft Fabric, which includes data pipelines and the Dataflow Gen 2. So now let's deep dive into the first aspect, that is Microsoft Fabric link. Now, to establish the Fabric link, there are a couple of prerequisites. First is the Fabric capacity associated with the workspace must be in the same geographical region. When I say geographical region, it does not mean the exact region, but the geographical region, meaning Southeast Asia and East Asia are part of Asia geographical region. So both, though, meaning the Fabric capacity and the Dataverse region should be in the same geographical region, which we'll see in a couple of minutes. Second is we need to enable certain features in the Fabric admin portal. That is, the user who is establishing the Fabric link must be part of the rule called ability to create Fabric items. Then that corresponding user in the Dataverse ecosystem must have system administrator security role. And finally, within the workspace where we are trying to establish the link, there the user must be the admin. So let's check the couple of prerequisites that I said. First is users can create Fabric item. So in this case, this user, that is datasharks@yldf, must have access or must be part of this users can create Fabric items. So in my personal organization, I have enabled it for the entire organization, which also includes for this user. That's checking off the first parameterization aspect. The second prerequisite is the user must be admin of that workspace in which we want to establish the Fabric link. And in this case, I am already the admin. Then comes in Power Apps, for that corresponding environment, that user must have security administrator role, which I am already part of. Hence, I am able to go and access the Power Apps table section for that corresponding environment. And then comes the geographical aspect part, which you would see in a couple of minutes. Now, how to verify the location? So for that, under Fabric admin portal, one can go under the capacity settings. And in the capacity settings, since for my workspace, if I go to workspace settings, under license info, I am using the trial license. And that trial license is present in Southeast Asia, meaning the Fabric capacity that I am utilizing is present in Southeast Asia. Now, let's check in which location the Dataverse is present. So for that, one has to log into the admin of the admin URL of the Power Platform, and under that go into the environments. Environments are like different databases corresponding to the different categorization that an organization needs. Similar to how in our ecosystem we have dev, test, UAT. Similarly, we can have different environments for different bifurcations. So in this case, if I go to the environment Nandan Hegde, I'll be able to see that it is present in Asia. Now, as I said, the geographical region is to match, which is Asia, and the regions need not be exact region, which was the limitation earlier, which Microsoft removed. This specific limitation of region should be exact match a couple of months earlier. So now, since my Dataverse environment and the Fabric capacity are in the same geographical region, now I am matching all the 4 prerequisites. So now, coming to the next aspect of how the Fabric link functions in the backend. So now let's consider that this is my Dataverse environment, wherein this contains my Dynamics 365 data, which is part of Power Platform. Now, whenever we establish the Fabric link, what happens is within the Dataverse, Microsoft creates or synchronizes the dynamic 365 table data into a Delta lake in the form of Delta and Parquet files. Now, this synchronization is happening within the Dataverse ecosystem itself. So, the data is not leaving the Dataverse ecosystem. It is still part of the Dataverse ecosystem itself, but there is incremental in the storage within the Dataverse. And Dataverse storage is a costly affair. So one has to weigh the benefits of cost due to storage increment versus data deduplication effort. In this case, Dataverse itself is the original source of truth and it itself is containing the data. So the dynamic 365 data is not moving outside the Dataverse ecosystem. Now, why is this duplication happening? Because of the concept of shortcuts. In order for the Fabric to create a shortcut, the source data must be in the form of Delta and Parquet file. And shortcuts are like data virtualization concepts, like a virtual pointer. Hence, to leverage the benefit of shortcut, Microsoft creates a Delta lake and preserves the data in the form of Delta Parquet file within the Dataverse ecosystem. Post this synchronization, during this synchronization, Microsoft creates shortcuts from the lakehouse that it creates, virtually pointing to the Delta Lake aspect. So in this way, the data is still present within the Dataverse ecosystem, and via shortcuts, we are reading the data into the Fabric lakehouse. So the data is not getting physically replicated in the Fabric ecosystem. So one can say that link to Microsoft Fabric creates Delta and Parquet files in the Dataverse storage to sync the data and the corresponding changes. And this creates a read replica of the data. No one has, since shortcut is a read-only functionality in Microsoft Fabric, so this is a read-only replica of the data that is getting created within the Dataverse itself. And as I stated, however, this data remains in the Dataverse storage only, and Fabric link is not actually syncing any data into the Fabric one link. Syncing meaning it is not physically replicating the data into the Fabric ecosystem. And once it synchronizes the data in the Delta Lake in the form of Delta Parquet, it creates a lakehouse in the Fabric workspace wherein I had the admin access and create shortcuts in the table section to all the source tables that are present within the Delta Parquet. So this is what happens behind when we establish a Fabric link. So now enough theoretical aspect, and let's go to the practical demo for the same. So now let's go and create establish a fabric link. So for that, first I have to go to my Power Apps portal, that is make.powerapps.com. Select the environment that I want to synchronize or that I want to create a fabric link for. Then under table section, there is a functionality called analyze. Click on link to Microsoft Fabric. So now what is happening is this is checking whether for my corresponding account, that is the account which I have logged in into this Power Apps portal, has a Power BI and a Fabric capacity associated with the corresponding Dataverse region or not. Since we saw that I do have in the same geographical region of Asia, this was a successful aspect. So now secondary aspect is creating a connection to Microsoft Fabric. Now to create a connection, it asks for the environment URL. Now from where do I get the environment URL? So within the admin portal under environments, you would get the corresponding environment URL, which is like a unique ID for every environment within the corresponding tenant. So now, since I already have that connection created, I can go and it's authenticating via my personal account that has access across both the Dataverse as well as the workspace. So now I'll click on the save connection. So what this is doing is it's now trying to create a connection to the Fabric ecosystem. It would take a couple of minutes. So now, since the connection is created, I'll move to the next aspect. Now within my Fabric ecosystem, I'll have multiple workspaces, correct? That might be present in the same geographical region. So you can see, correct? Your environment is located in East Asia region. So now I can select the corresponding workspace that are allocated in the corresponding geographical region. So in this case, I'll select a workspace that I have predefined called Dataverse. And then click on next. And before I click on create, let's check these steps. I've already established a workspace. Now let's go and check that workspace. These are two predefined lake houses that are already present. You all can ignore this for now, correct? But what happens is, once I click on create, for the corresponding workspace that I have linked in the previous step, it creates a new lakehouse. And the lakehouse is in the form of Dataverse underscore the environment name underscore CDS underscore the workspace unique name. This is the default naming convention standard that Microsoft leverages while creating the corresponding lakehouse, which we would see in a couple of minutes. Then parallelly, it is establishing the or creating a read-only replica in the Dataverse storage, and it's also creating shortcuts from that read-only replica to the lakehouse. And since the read-only replica takes couple of time, the initialization of those shortcuts would take some time. And we'll see how that works across. And now let me click on create. Now, one aspect in the Fabric link is we saw, correct? Here you can see there are multiple tables that are associated with my Dataverse. In Fabric link, I do not get the option to choose the specific tables that I want to link it to the Fabric ecosystem. By default, all the tables gets selected and a read-only replica for them is created. when you try to establish the fabric link for the first time. But eventually, as and when you add new tables, you have to explicitly go and synchronize them into the fabric link that you would see in a couple of minutes. So now, if I check in the analyze aspect linked to Microsoft Fabric, your tables are already linked to the Microsoft Fabric. And if I go to the Azure Synapse link aspect, it would show to me that my environment is synchronized to Microsoft One link. And since at an organization, the Dataverse is linked to a tenant, and in a tenant corresponding to the Microsoft Fabric ecosystem, there can be only one link. Hence, with this aspect, we can conclude that there can be only one fabric link established from a Dataverse environment to the corresponding fabric ecosystem. You cannot have more than one fabric link for the same environment in the fabric ecosystem. Now, this states that the fabric link has been established. So now let's go and check my workspace. Let me refresh the workspace. Voila. You all can see that a new lakehouse got created just now. And the naming convention of that lakehouse is in the form Dataverse underscore Nandan Hegde, which was the environment name underscore CDS chain data service workspace, and the ID a unique ID associated with the corresponding linkage. Now, does that mean that we cannot change the name of the lakehouse? While establishing the fabric link, there is no option to manually parameterize it. But once the lakehouse is created, I can go and under the settings, I can go and rename this lakehouse as fabric link lakehouse. So now this is renaming the lakehouse to fabric link lakehouse. Now let's go and check what exactly is happening. Let me also create a duplicate tab. So if you see now, I can see that in the fabric link, there are around 99 plus unidentified objects in the table section. Now, why are this stated as unidentified? Because, as I said, fabric link is trying to create a read-only replica within the Dataverse ecosystem in the Delta Lake. And from that Delta Lake, a shortcut is getting created. So, for that synchronization aspect, Microsoft Fabric link does take some time. So till that time, the synchronization is happening. These shortcuts would be under unidentified state. And it does take a couple of time for them to synchronize properly. So rather than us waiting till that time, let me go to another environment, that is YLDF7. So before the call, I have already established a fabric link for this environment, that is YLDF7. So let me go to that lakehouse, Dataverse underscore YLDF7. So here you can see that. Let me zoom in a little. This symbol here signifies that the tables that are present here are not physical tables within the Fabric ecosystem, but these are actually shortcuts that have been created. So now, once the data synchronization has taken place in the read-only replica, all those shortcuts would move from unidentified section to the respective entities. You can see here, correct? Account as of now is under unidentified section because synchronization is taking place. But once the synchronization does happen, all the entities would be under the table section. And we can see the data and query the data that is present in the Dataverse. It's because of the concept of shortcuts. So this is Fabric Link. So I'll reiterate again. In case of Fabric Link, data is not moving outside the Dataverse ecosystem, and it's via shortcut that we are referencing the data that is present in the Dataverse ecosystem in the Fabric Lakehouse. This is Fabric Link. Now, the question comes, what is the synchronization time? So whatever change that happens at the Dataverse level, that gets synchronized within 45 minutes to 1 hour into the uh, Delta Lake. And Delta Lake shortcut that is created in the Lakehouse is a virtual pointer to the Delta Lake. So whenever the data becomes available in the Delta Lake, it becomes instantly available in the Fabric ecosystem. So as of today, the latency of the data synchronization between the actual Dataverse to the Fabric ecosystem is 45 minutes to 1 hour, and it can be much more quicker as well. But as a part of recent announcement in the Las Vegas Fabric conference that happened last month, Microsoft is coming up with a concept called fast link, fast copy in Microsoft Fabric Link, wherein this synchronization would happen in a matter of 5 minutes rather than a latency of 45 to 1 hour as well. And for that, it would be rolled off across all the tenants for the existing Fabric link that has already been established. So that would automatically reduce the latency and give better benefits for the organization to do real-time analytics on the Dataverse data. So this is with respect to Fabric link. Now you all can see, correct? Two of the tables were moved from unidentified to the table section because those got synchronized. And eventually around a span of 1 hour, since this is the first time setup, it would take around 1 hour for all the entities to sync and be a proper table. So we covered the first aspect of Fabric Link. Now coming to the second way of integrating Dataverse with Microsoft Fabric. That's what we call as shortcuts. So in Lakehouse, I can click on and create a new shortcut. Now, as of today, for external sources, Dataverse is one of the source that is supported by Microsoft Fabric. So I'll click on the Dataverse. Now, for that first step is to create a connection. Now to create a connection, it would ask you for the environment name and authenticate. You can authenticate it via the organizational account only that has read access on the Dataverse entities. Since I already have an existing connection created, I'll leverage that. So let me check the URL for YLDF 7. So this is for Nandan Hegde, it is 753. 753. Now, let me click on next. Now, can you see only these many tables from the Dataverse are available for me to create a shortcut into the Fabric Lake. But I do have other tables here, correct? Like accounts. You all can see, correct? I have account, action card. Why aren't those tables visible? It's because of this reason here. Now, whatever tables has been synchronized into the Delta Lake, and it is this set of tables, correct? ADX, AI plugin, connection roles, till this. Option set metadata accounts are yet under unidentified state. Hence, only a subset of tables are visible to me as of now to create a shortcut to. Now, let me create a shortcut to my other environment, that is YLDF7, wherein all the synchronization has already taken place. So it was FI2. Can you see this contains more number of entities? Correct. So what does this state? So basically for any user to create a shortcut from Dataverse, unfortunately, the first step is someone within the tenant must have already created a Fabric link. Because, as I said, to create a shortcut, the source data on which we are creating the shortcut must be in the form of delta parquet. And it's only when a Fabric link is established that the Dataverse data becomes available in the Delta Lake in the form of delta parquet on which we can create shortcuts. So I hope with these two environments and the synchronization aspect, you understood that in order to link a Dataverse entity from the concept of shortcuts, one needs to already have enabled a Fabric link for that corresponding Dataverse environment. Isn't that sort of duplication effort? So that's where the concept of security pitches in. And I'll explain that. Once a Fabric link is established, all the tables are synchronized into a lakehouse in a workspace. Consider that as the admin workspace, because the account, my account via which I had created the Fabric link, has admin access on the workspace as well as security administrator access on the Dataverse. So I am the admin on the overall Dataverse ecosystem and I have established the Fabric link. Now imagine another user within my organization has only read access on these three tables. Correct? And he needs to access those three tables, meaning that user who have read-only access on specific entities in the Dataverse tables, they need to link those data itself into the Fabric ecosystem. At that time, the concept of shortcut comes in, because while creating a shortcut, the user has to create a connection that we all saw using his own organizational account. Correct? So then only for the entities on which the user has read access, those components only would be visible to him, even if the entire Fabric link has been established for all the entities. So in short, in case if I have to say, when a Fabric link is established, all the tables get synchronized into the lakehouse and the entity level security is lost in the lakehouse aspect via the Fabric link. But via shortcuts, the security hierarchy that has been created in the Dataverse ecosystem that prevails, and the users who have the corresponding access can only create shortcuts for those corresponding entities to which he or she has access to, thereby ensuring that data security is still in place, though the data is still present in the Dataverse ecosystem. But the catch is one has to establish a fabric link, meaning the admin of the organization who is managing the fabric ecosystem and the Dataverse ecosystem has to set up the fabric link. Post that only the users would be able to uh, create shortcuts. That was the second way of integrating Dataverse with fabric ecosystem. But now, as I said, Dataverse is a costly affair, Dataverse storage. On top of that, we are duplicating a read-only replica. So for some organization, it might be a heavy cost to bear, which they won't be able to afford. So in that case, there comes another concept of Synapse link, that is link to Azure Synapse. So now let me go to my environment, Nandan Hegde. There, let me click on Analyze and link to Azure Synapse. Now, those Azure Synapse, or let me take one step back. How Microsoft Fabric is a software as a solution that covers everything from, it's an all-in-one platform, from data engineering to data science to analytics. Prior to Microsoft Fabric, Microsoft had a Azure PaaS offering, platform as a service offering called Azure Synapse. That was one stop shop for everything from data movement to data storage to data analytics. So one can consider Microsoft Fabric as a SaaS version of Azure Synapse. So in this case, first step for us is, as the name suggests, link to Azure Synapse. Correct? So for that, in my Azure, that is Azure, I have to create a Synapse workspace and a storage account that is associated with the Synapse workspace and create a Apache Spark pool within the Synapse workspace. Now, why are we creating this Spark pool? I'll come to that. But I have to create a Synapse workspace and it would contain a storage account associated with that. And the geographical region must be the same, East Asia. So now let's observe the container section. Similar to how we had the lake house, here in the Synapse link, we have something called as the containers. Correct? Now let me establish the Azure Synapse link for my corresponding Nandan Hegde environment. So for that, I'll click on new link. I need to connect to the corresponding Synapse Analytics workspace. So I have multiple subscriptions. So I'll select my subscription wherein I have the Synapse. It's under Dataverse Synapse Resource Group. And this is the workspace name. Now, there is one catch here. If you see, use Spark Pool for Delta Lake data conversion job. Correct? What does this suggest? A Spark pool needs to be created under the selected Azure Synapse workspace that I showed, correct? And what this Spark pool would do is, the Spark jobs will be executed to convert each selected table to the Delta Lake format. Why do we need the Delta Lake format? To create shortcuts. We all saw, correct, that one can establish shortcuts from Fabric ecosystem to Azure Data Lake storage. And to read a shortcut, the base data must be in the delta Parquet format. For that, we need the Spark pool. But for now, let me proceed without selecting this option. And you will understand why. And link the corresponding storage account. I'll click next. Now, the difference here that we would be observing is, unlike Fabric Link, wherein it used to synchronize all the entities, here I have the option to select the specific entities that I want to synchronize. So as of now, I selected 4 tables or the 4 entities. And in the advanced section, you can basically enable incremental updates on the folder structure. Since I have disabled the Spark, by default, the time interval would be an hourly interval. Correct? We'll check on that configuration again once we establish this first level. So now let me click on save. So by the time this is getting executed or this is getting created, let's take a look here. You all can see, correct? The tables have been synchronized now that were in the unidentified section. So it usually, since this is my test environment, it contains less data. But for production environments, it might take around 1 hour for the first time synchronization to take place completely. So now, for the corresponding environment, the Dataverse, the Azure Synapse link got established. So let me go to the container here. Let me refresh this page here. A fourth container got created in the naming convention Dataverse dash the environment name and the unique identifier. So now let me go into that container. Within that container, for the respective entities that I had synchronized, respective folders are created. Okay, I do not have data in couple of entities. So let me check action card. For now, I'll show a demo as a different aspect wherein I do have the data. Correct. So basically, whenever a Synapse link gets created, the data gets synchronized physically, meaning the data is moving out from the Dataverse ecosystem into the Azure Data Lake storage in the form of a CSV file. So the CSV file contains all the data that has been loaded from the Dataverse here. So the data is getting duplicated into the Azure ecosystem. So unlike Fabric Link, wherein a read-only replica was getting created into the Dataverse itself, the data is getting cloned or copied from the Dataverse into the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 in the form of CSV files. Correct? So now, in case if I click on this Azure link, correct, I am not seeing any link to Fabric aspect, which we'll see in a couple of minutes later. Why? Because to link, the data must be in the form of delta Parquet, and here the data is only in the form of CSV files for that corresponding ecosystem, for that corresponding entities. Can you see the snapshot file now got generated for that corresponding entity accounts in Nandan Hegde content? Let me edit. This would contain all the data for that corresponding aspect. If I go back here, I am only able to see the entity folders and the corresponding JSON CSV files. So now, let me go and unlink this. So once I unlink this, this would go and delete the container that was created here. So it's unlinking itself from the Azure ecosystem. It takes a couple of minutes to do that because we'll be re-establishing the Synapse link to check the concept of the Spark pool. But parallelly, by the time that is happening, since we are on time, short would be short of time, let me show on how to edit or make changes in the existing links that have been established rather than unlinking and relinking it every time. So let me go to another environment called YLDF7. That's a pre-configured environment and ecosystem that I have. Correct? So here you need to click on the corresponding here. You need to click on manage tables. So it is taking time. So here the tables that were created newly can then be selected and we can click on save. This is with respect to the Fabric link. With respect to the Dataverse link, you can go into the details section. This would show you which all aspects have been synchronized and in what format. Now here you are able to see Parquet because we have established the Spark pool that we would be creating here. Okay. So now the Synapse link has been unlinked. Let me go and check the container. The container has been automatically deleted. Same happens whenever you unlink a Fabric link as well. Once you unlink a Fabric link, automatically the lakehouse that was created automatically gets deleted from the workspace that would see at the end. But now let me quickly go and create a new Synapse link. I'll follow the same process of selecting the subscription, the resource group, the workspace, and I'll select the Spark pool this time. Since I have only one Spark pool, it automatically populated it. I'll click on next. I'll select a couple of entities, click on save. So this would be running in, this would again go and create a container within the corresponding Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, but there would be a catch now. Delta Parquet file would also be getting created because of the Spark pool that was introduced. And now here, under the Synapse link table section, it shows which all entities have been synchronized and when was it last synchronized on. As I said, in case if any change occurs, it would get synchronized into the corresponding ecosystem. Okay, the Synapse link got established. So again, the container would have been created. If I go to the container, it is taking time to synchronize, correct? So let's wait for a couple of minutes. See, it's creating those synchronization aspect. So now let's compare the pros and differences across the Fabric link and the Synapse link. In case of Fabric link, the source data of Dataverse has never left the Dataverse ecosystem. It was still part of Dataverse and we were virtually querying the data. But the catch was it was creating a read-only replica, increasing the Dataverse storage, and Dataverse is a costly affair. So that might significantly increase the cost, but would lead to data security, that data is not leaving the Dataverse ecosystem. Data is not getting duplicated. In case of Synapse link, Dataverse storage is not getting increased. It's the same Dataverse, but the data is physically getting cloned or duplicated in an Azure Data Lake storage. Azure Data Lake storage is very cheap. So even if the data is getting copied over there, it's not a major cost, but the catch is data is getting duplicated and the security is not replicated. So whoever is managing that workspace would have the entire access to the Dataverse data, which he or she should not have in case the security bounds. So one has to have multiple data securities because of this data duplication effort. So it's a catch between cost and data governance. Along with that, in case of Fabric Link, there was only Dataverse and Fabric involved. In case of Synapse Link, that we would see in a couple of minutes, there is Dataverse, there is Azure Synapse, and then there is Fabric. So then that meaning there is another maintenance aspect that increases, meaning an additional bridge comes in between. So then it should be a team who can manage all of the three aspects. So the maintenance aspect increases to some extent. Now, the corresponding entity got created in the form of CSV files. Parallelly, what happens is now the Spark pools are getting executed. Correct. So for the ones I already have, since I have only 8 minutes, I'll show the pre-existing environment. Along with the change log that was present here, a delta lake gets created. And for every entity, a corresponding delta parquet file gets created. Parquet file. And it is via this that one can establish the shortcut and create the link in the Fabric ecosystem. So now, since the Spark pools are getting executed, now I get the option of link to Microsoft Fabric, which was not available earlier. Because earlier, there was no concept of Delta Parquet, Delta Lake. But now, since we have enabled the Spark pool, the Spark pools are converting or creating a data lake, a Delta Lake, and the entities in the form of Delta Parquet. And via this, now I can establish from the data lake storage to the Fabric. So now I'll select Dataverse and I'll click on Save. So now what would happen is, if I go to the Dataverse, correct, a fourth lakehouse got created. But the naming convention is Dataverse underscore Nandan Hegde, meaning the environment name, the storage layer, Dataverse ADLS link. And this is how from Fabric, from Dataverse, we created a Synapse link in the Synapse workspace. From there, we are creating shortcuts and establishing a lakehouse in the Fabric. So rather than in the Fabric link, it was a direct connectivity. In Synapse link, it's a bridge connectivity, but it is preserving the cost aspect since ADLS is a cheap aspect. So this is Synapse link. Now, let me quickly unlink the Fabric link to show you all that. Automatically, once the Fabric link is unlinked, the lakehouse associated with that uh, Fabric link also gets deleted from the workspace. It need not be done manually. So up till now, we saw three major ways of integrating the Dataverse data into the Fabric ecosystem. Then comes the data factory experiences, correct? So I'll be very quick in this, wherein one can create a data pipeline or a Dataflow Gen 2. Since we have 5 minutes, I won't cover Dataflow Gen 2 because Dataflow Gen 2 is like a data pipeline, but one can do data transformations on the source data before loading it into the destination, unlike data pipeline wherein one can only copy the data as is from source to the destination. Correct? So this is getting unlinked. Sorry, now if I'm running parallelly, but now is the need. So here, what we can do is we can use a copy activity. In copy activity, I can select the source as the Dataverse. We do have a Dataverse as a source. Since I already have a connection established to the Dataverse, I'll be reusing that. Correct? And the connection type is Dataverse. And here I can select the entity that I want to copy. It does take time to load couple of entities. So in this case, via data pipeline, I can copy. Now let's select account. So I can select the account entity and physically copy into, let's say, a lake house. Correct? As a new table. Let's say new table is test. And let me execute the pipeline. So now what is happening is the data pipeline within the fabric is physically copying the data from the account entity in the Dataverse into the fabric lakehouse or anywhere. And similarly, one can use a Dataflow Gen 2, wherein the source would be Dataverse. One can do n number of transformation and then can load into a lakehouse. So then why would one use this? Because imagine that unlike Fabric Link and Synapse Link, wherein it's as of that moment the data gets synchronized. But in case if someone wants to have a snapshot data daily once, so in that case, one can have a scheduled job established via data pipeline and data flow gen 2 to physically copy the data from the Dataverse ecosystem into the fabric and preserve those snapshots on a scheduled basis. So this is with respect to the data factory experience of integrating Dataverse into fabric. So now the fabric link was unlinked, and you can see that the corresponding CDS2 lakehouse also got deleted or removed from this workspace. So this are different ways of how one can integrate Dataverse into Fabric. Now, final aspect that I'll say before closing is Microsoft is also integrating is also bringing a concept of mirroring Dataverse data into the Fabric ecosystem. That was announced in the Fabric conference. That would be another way in next couple of months, wherein the Dataverse data can be directly mirrored into the Fabric ecosystem without the need of some external ETL tools. So 2 minutes before, okay, I see a couple of questions which I like to clear. In the Dataflow Gen 2 or data pipeline is part of ADF. And here the actual data is copied into the lakehouse and not a shortcut. Yes, the data factory experience that we are using, the data pipeline or the Dataflow Gen 2, it is physically copying the data from Dataverse into the lakehouse. It's not a shortcut. And it's not part of Azure Data Factory. It's part of data factory experience within the Microsoft Fabric, data pipeline and Dataflow Gen 2. Unlike data flows in ADF, it's not data flow. The data flow here is the Power BI version of the data flow, not the ADF data flow. Though the data pipeline is built on top of ADF engine, both are different. And what would be the cost to access Dataverse data from Fabric? Now that cost differs from organization to organization because, as I said, this was my test environment, which hardly contains any data. Imagine organization would have dynamic 365 data, finance data. So depending on the amount of data, it would be amount of data into 2 because it's a read-only replica that is getting created, correct? So the cost differs based on the data that is being present. So this concludes different ways of integrating. In case if you all still have any queries, do reach out to me via LinkedIn or my Twitter profile, and I'll be happy to help you all with that.